Hello, and welcome to this episode of Wreck-It Recruiter. Katie McConnell Olson here, your resident floating head and Wreck-It Recruiter, here to talk about everything related to hiring, human capital, and recruiting done wrong so that you can complain about it. And today we're talking about background checks, brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and GrowthWise Search Partners, providing human capital and hiring solutions for rapid growth companies throughout the US. So let's talk a little bit about background check and a little bit of context. When I say background check, I mean we're thinking of, or we have hired this individual and we want to make sure that they weren't a criminal, right? We want to make sure that they weren't in the slammer or that they're not going to start making drugs in the bathroom of our office and selling them. And if they are, we better know about it because we want to profit off of that too, right? That's like moonlighting, and that's in a company handbook, but we'll talk about that on another episode. So anyways, how do we make sure that we know if they're a criminal or not? A background check. So just number one, don't do it, right? I mean, I've said this before, and you know this if you're following the Wreck-It Recruiter program, and that's just not doing things is one of the best things that we can do because it's easier and we're busy. Duh, we've talked about this. But anyways, just don't do it. And if you do, make it a super manual paper process. I'm talking have them fill out the background check authorization, send it over in an email so that they can send it back to you with their social security number on it, totally unsecured over the internet. I mean, nobody has a fax machine anymore, but if you do fax it, make sure that it sits around too so people could see their history of where they've lived. I mean, it's kind of an identity theft risk, but nobody really wants to be them anyways. So what's the harm, right? You can trust everyone in your company, especially if you haven't done a background check on anyone else that works for you. Anywho's, just make sure that it's really difficult to get it done if you are going to do it. And also that it takes forever. I'm talking, paperwork goes in, maybe it sits on your desk for a few days, you get it to the vendor, they get delayed. I mean, best case scenario, it comes back well after the person has already started, and you start them anyways because they're probably fine. You're going off of good faith. You've got a job to get done. No one's got time to cross I's and dot T's. Let's just get them in the chair and we'll worry about that background check later, right? Now, if we are going to do a background check and it's slow and, laborious process, and we're not going to get results back before they start, let's also make sure that we don't really know what the vendor is including in the package. Are they checking social security verification? Are they checking civil criminal or just criminal? Has this person sued a prior employer? Like that's not going to happen to you. So who cares about the civil stuff? We just want to make sure they haven't been in the slammer, right? And you know this if you've watched our previous course on illegal questions in the interview. You can't usually ask about if they've committed a felony depending on the state. So make sure you do that because we're all about breaking the law with wrecking everything, right? But also, who cares if it's just a misdemeanor, right? You don't want to have a policy about that. So if they do have a dirty background, you don't want to have a policy about whether or not that precludes you from making a hire. So basically hire them anyway, but at least you have the paperwork. Forget to put it in the personnel file. Organization is for the birds, and that's part of the whole Wreck-It program too, right? Just forget it. Just like file it in paper somewhere. And if you ever get audited, like we'll find it in a stack somewhere. But, filing systems and organization and personnel files, that's also a lot of work. We're all about trying to avoid work, right? So we don't know what it includes. We're not going to get it in the right places. I've said it before and I will say it again. Not knowing what you're doing and doing it anyway is not only an amazing strategy, but it's also a great training and culture setting tool in your organization. Being inconsistent depending on the hire is also great. Maybe sometimes we do a driving record check, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we include credit checks, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we look for violent crime and arson, sometimes we don't. No written policies. Again, I cannot say this enough. Poor communication and lack of written policies are Wreck-It 101, okay? Borderline illegal and downright discriminatory are also amazing ways to apply the Wreck-It philosophies. And that, in a nutshell, is how to wreck it with a background check. Now, of course, this is all in good fun, and some of that may have resonated with you as things maybe you're currently doing or areas where you can tighten up your background check processes. So if any of that sticks and you think, let's have a conversation about it, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how GrowthWise can help you optimize all of your hiring processes or take them off your plate entirely or recommend you some best practices. Click on the link in the description below for growthwisesearchpartners.com. We'll be glad to help you. And also don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time.